May 28, 1940. Reich Air Ministry in Berlin. Reich Marshal Hermann Göring put down the intelligence briefing with open disdain. The report described President Roosevelt's appeal to Congress for an extraordinary increase in American aircraft manufacturing, envisioning the production of 50,000 planes per year. If the Americans think such propaganda will intimidate us, they are truly desperate, Göring remarked to his officers. They have no understanding of war industry. Let them attempt to adapt their car plants. They will find out that making warplanes takes more than just production lines. What Göring overlooked was that, in Detroit, a Danish émigré named William Knudsen was already disproving his assumptions. This ex-General Motors leader, now serving as Roosevelt's chief of production for a token salary of $1 a year, was directing the largest industrial overhaul ever seen. In less than 4 years, American manufacturers would be turning out not the so-called implausible 50,000 aircraft dismissed by Göring, but almost 100,000 planes per year, all while supporting two battlefronts separated by great oceans. The announcement that sparked German scorn was issued on May 16, 1940, as German tanks advanced through France. Addressing Congress, Franklin Roosevelt stated, "I should like to see this nation geared up to the ability to turn out at least 50,000 planes a year." Even among the Allies, the response was doubtful. The United States had produced only 3,611 military planes in 1939. The Army Air Corps inventory included 1,700 combat aircraft, many classified as outdated. Nevertheless, Roosevelt insisted on a 14-fold boost in output. William Knudsen became the mastermind behind this feat. Asked who could deliver such miraculous production, presidential counselor Bernard Baruch replied, "First, Bill Knudsen. Second, Bill Knudsen. Third, Bill Knudsen." Knudsen gave up his $300,000 a year position to serve his new homeland, applying auto industry mass production techniques to airplane assembly. The change got underway at once. By December 1941, American plants were rolling out 2,000 warplanes each month, a 20-fold jump from the pace 2 years before. The Ford Motor Company publicized plans for an enormous bomber factory in Willow Run, Michigan. Boeing grew its Seattle operations. Douglas Aircraft put thousands of employees on their payroll. The arsenal of democracy was coming to life. The German High Command's underestimation of American resourcefulness arose from both racist ideology and deliberate ignorance. General Friedrich von Bodecher, the German military attaché in Washington from 1933 to 1941, sent precise dispatches relaying American industrial buildup. His December 1940 message warned, "American war production will reach unimaginable heights." These cautions were brushed aside in Berlin as defeatist overstatement. When Bodecher visited Hitler in February 1939 to brief him on America's potential, the Führer raved about American racial inferiority instead of valuing intelligence reports. Hitler declared that Americans, being part Jewish and part African American, were unfit for sustained conflict. This doctrinal stubbornness would ultimately prove disastrous. The bias was widespread. Luftwaffe intelligence dismissed evidence of women working in airplane factories as indications of American weakness. They could not imagine that democratic societies could outdo authoritarian regimes in output. When stories surfaced of factories running continuously in 3 shifts, German experts concluded these were inflated claims. The Nazi mindset simply could not comprehend the true scale of American industry. Ford's Willow Run facility represented the heights of American aspiration. Built on previously rural land starting April 18, 1941, it soon was the largest single-roof factory worldwide, covering 3.5 million square feet with an assembly line measuring a full mile in length. Charles Sorensen, who was Ford's production chief, claimed he would deliver one B-24 Liberator bomber every hour at a time when rival plants only managed one per day. The earliest outcomes were disastrous. The initial completed bomber in September 1942 needed to be completely reconstructed. Failures in quality control reached a rate of 50%. Willow Run made only 56 bombers per month by February 1943, far fewer than the hundreds that had been promised. Detractors nicknamed the project, "Will it run?" However, Ford engineers persisted, breaking down the B-24's 488,193 components into easier-to-handle subassemblies. They invented hydraulic riveters, ready-made wiring harnesses, and moving production lines. The team handled 578 design modifications in 1943 alone while still keeping production going. By September 1943, output rose to 148 bombers per month. In December, this reached 365. The turning point occurred in April 1944 when Willow Run built 428 B-24s, one coming off the line every 63 minutes, around the clock. This one plant was surpassing the entire German aircraft industry in output. German airmen first noted American production dominance during the Tunisia operations. Major Johannes Steinhoff, the commander of JG-77, observed in December 1942, "The American pilots are no longer novices. Most alarmingly, their numbers grow daily." The recognition intensified in 1943. On January 27, the first U.S. bombing raid on German soil took place with 64 bombers striking Wilhelmshaven. By October, during the catastrophic Black Thursday at Schweinfurt, the Americans might lose 60 B-17s but could replenish that number within 2 weeks. The figures had become undeniable. During the so-called Big Week from February 20 to 25, 1944, the 8th and 15th Air Forces launched 3,500 bomber sorties targeting German aircraft production. The Luftwaffe lost between 262 and 355 fighters. More crucially, nearly 100 experienced pilots who could not be replaced. General Adolf Galland told Göring that Germany was losing 1,200 fighters each month but only making 1,000. While America produced 2,500 fighters every month but suffered losses of just 400. Major Heinz Bahr, a leading German ace credited with 220 kills, recounted a mission over Brunswick in January 1944. The bomber formation seemed endless, extending to the horizon, consisting of no fewer than 700 B-17s and Liberators. They had just 8 fighters facing hundreds, making their chances futile. By 1944, America's plane production had reached vast numbers. Throughout that year alone, American factories delivered 96,270 aircraft, including 16,048 four-engine bombers, 35,743 fighters, and 22,591 multi-engine planes. This year's production total was greater than the entire German output for the war, which was about 94,677 aircraft. The contrast wasn't only in numbers. Each U.S. bomber came armed with 13.50 caliber machine guns and several thousand rounds of ammo. German fighters increasingly took off with only partial loads of ammunition. American bombers featured powered gun turrets, advanced bomb sights, and state-of-the-art navigation devices. Many German fighters did not have working radios. The Seattle Plant 2 of Boeing built 16 B-17s every day by May 1944. Douglas Aircraft, which had only 68 personnel in 1936, had expanded to 167,000 employees working at 9 sites. North American Aviation was rolling out 500 P-51 Mustangs periodically each month. Lockheed managed to complete 1 P-38 Lightning every 90 minutes while incorporating 2,127 modifications based on combat experience. The supporting industries kept up this momentum. General Motors turned out 57,658 aircraft engines under license. Packard manufactured 55,523 Rolls-Royce Merlin engines. Alcoa's aluminum production rose 600%. Dow Chemical's magnesium output surged from 6 million pounds a year to 333 million. The shift in America's labor force challenged Nazi assumptions. In 1941, women comprised less than 1% of airplane industry staff, but by 1943, They made up 65%, numbering 310,000 among aviation workers. At Douglas Long Beach, 22,380 of 41,620 employees were women. Rose Monroe, said to be the original Rosie the Riveter, installed 3,000 rivets per shift at Willow Run, achieving 99.5% accuracy. Female inspectors at Douglas managed to cut defect rates from 3.2% down to 0.3%. Ford altered tools for smaller hands, surprisingly raising productivity. Lighter pneumatic-driven tools lessened fatigue, and improved workstation layouts brought injury numbers down. German intelligence saw the hiring of female workers as a sign of weakness. An intercepted Luftwaffe analysis minimized their significance, forecasting an eventual dive in workmanship. Yet, standards got even stricter. Women were especially skilled in tasks requiring attention to detail wiring, instrumentation, and inspections. Their inclusion symbolized democratic resilience, not fragility. While American manufacturing output reached new heights, Germany turned to unrealistic hopes. In February 1944, Göring approved the Jagger Initiative, spreading manufacturing across 729 subterranean sites with forced labor. The Middle Complex held 60,000 inmates under appalling circumstances, resulting in 20,000 deaths. These underground plants turned out more flawed products than usable planes. Enslaved workers deliberately damaged parts. Shuttling items between these separated sites introduced significant lag. Oversight of quality disintegrated. The Middlework complex as a whole delivered fewer engines per month than Ford's lone Chicago factory. During this period, American ingenuity advanced rapidly. Boeing instituted sectional B-29 assembly in 4 separate plants, ensuring parts could be swapped out completely. The pressurized B-29, each with a $65,000 price tag, featured capabilities Germany could not replicate even in test models. By early 1945, the United States was rolling out 100 B-29 bombers each month. June 6, 1944 stood as the apex of American manufacturing capacity. On D-Day, 11,590 Allied planes participated against just 319 German sorties, a 36-to-1 advantage. This was not a matter of battlefield tactics but of industrial devastation. From January through May 1944, 145,000 tons of bombs were dropped on German sites during pre-invasion raids, surpassing all bombs Germany ever dropped on Britain. Air transports carried 3 airborne divisions in a single day, utilizing more planes than Germany ever had in their entire transport fleet. By December 1944, individual assault missions used 1,200 bombers shielded by 900 escort fighters. P-51 Mustangs had the reach to strike Poland, the ability to challenge any enemy aircraft, and were produced in such numbers that losing some posed no problem. German airmen nicknamed them Indians for their omnipresence. With defeat nearing, even top Nazi officials recognized the immense production failure. In December 1944, Goebbels noted in his journal, "Göring's claims about Luftwaffe dominance now look like dangerous fantasies. We are confronting the world's top industrial nation with mere slogans." RML informed his team ahead of D-Day, "The Americans could afford to lose 10 tanks for each one we destroy and still overpower us. Their invasion will bring such overwhelming material might that defenses cannot stand." Hitler even conceded to Speer in January 1945, "We should have heeded Bertick's analyses. Their industrial might won the contest. As we built hundreds, they turned out tens of thousands." Albert Speer testified later that American bombing curbed German tank output by 35%, slashed aircraft by 31%, and cut truck production by 42%. He was clear in stating that the coordinated American industrial offensives fractured the German arms effort. Germany's Me-262 jet fighter, which became operational by mid-1944, was truly advanced 100 mph faster than any Allied plane. Hitler and Göring trusted that this technological marvel could regain the skies, even though they were vastly outnumbered. Yet only 1,430 Me-262s were built, with just 200 ready for combat at the same time. The engines wore out after 10 hours and key resources often had to be substituted with inferior alternatives due to shortages. At the same time, America initiated jet fighter work in 1942. The Bell P-59 could not match German jets, but Lockheed's P-80 Shooting Star outclassed all German jets and was launched before the war ended. Deep American industry enabled investments in multiple new technologies simultaneously, a flexibility Germany lacked. This distinction embodied the resolution of the production conflict. Germany's edge in jet innovation was meaningless in the face of America's ability to mass-produce thousands of standard fighters while advancing future aircraft designs. In an all-out war, technological edge was useless without the capacity for mass production. The apprehension of Hermann Göring on May 8, 1945, by members of the U.S. 36th Infantry Division signaled the start of his encounter with reality. At first, he remained defiant at the interrogation center in Augsburg, insisting that German technological superiority had only been overcome through sheer enemy numbers. His later relocation to Camp Ashcan in Luxembourg, a specialized center for top Nazi officials, subjected him to thorough interrogation. Major Kenneth Heckler carried out detailed interviews with Göring in July 1945, chronicling Göring's growing awareness of America's industrial dominance. Göring admitted to Heckler, "I knew the United States had great industrial potential. But what they accomplished went far beyond my worst expectations." He remarked that just the one Willow Run plant manufactured more airplanes than Germany's entire bomber fleet at its largest. This was, to him, beyond comprehension. Göring was particularly struck by the scale of American logistics. "The manner in which you supported your forces across 2 oceans while sustaining domestic output," he stated. "This was unimaginable for us. We were unable to sustain operations 500 miles from Germany. You were able to support forces 5,000 miles from American soil." During his appearance at the Nuremberg trials, prosecutors presented an overwhelming array of evidence highlighting America's industrial superiority. Graphs displayed that by 1944, the United States was manufacturing more aircraft monthly than Germany could produce in a full year. Prosecutors played films of Willow Run's assembly lines as they enumerated the German cities leveled by bombers assembled at that single site. Göring's statement in his March 14, 1946 testimony exposed his difficulty grasping the enormity. "I always considered the United States' economic and technical capacities to be extraordinary, especially in aviation. Still, I had never fathomed that their aircraft output could multiply 100 times in just 4 years. That level of growth appeared impossible to me." Camp psychologist G.M. Gilbert observed Göring's fixation with production data. Göring continuously worked out ratios, comparing an individual American plant's production to the entirety of German output. He was notably obsessed with Willow Run, describing it as that cursed factory that broke us. When presented with figures showing America's 812,615 aircraft engines produced against Germany's 241,675, Göring could only gaze at the numbers in silence. The undeniable arithmetic of defeat was clear. The magnitude of this transformation still astounds. The U.S. went from building 3,611 military planes in 1940 to a total of 295,959 by the war's conclusion. 97,810 bombers, 99,465 fighters, and 98,684 of other types. This indicated not just overwhelming numbers, but comprehensive superiority throughout the production system. At the wartime peak, 2 million Americans were employed in aircraft manufacturing, representing previously unmatched diversity. Women, African Americans, Mexican Americans, Native Americans, disabled people, youth, and senior citizens all contributed. Such democratic mobilization produced results that authoritarian command could not match. The voluntary participation surpassed the results of forced labor by any standard. New factory workers in 1941, utterly unversed in airplane construction, had become by 1945 the world's best aviation workforce. Their contribution was not limited to building planes, they reshaped manufacturing as a whole. Statistical quality control, devised for bomber building, became a global industrial standard. Automation strategies innovated at Willow Run revolutionized worldwide production. The engineers behind the bomber assembly lines would one day design the Saturn V rocket. The women who assembled B-24s would raise the generation that walked on the moon. The manufacturing miracle didn't halt with the war's end, it ushered in the American century. Financially, these undertakings defied established economics. Aircraft manufacture required $45 billion in 1940s funds, over $800 billion adjusted for today. The B-29 program by itself cost more than the Manhattan Project. Despite these colossal figures, war production generated an unparalleled economic boom for America instead of financial ruin. Joblessness that had blighted the Depression era totally disappeared. Between 1940 and 1945, household income doubled. Workers themselves underwrote much of the buildup by buying war bonds. Workers at Willow Run alone invested $45 million in war bonds, funding their own facility. In contrast, by 1944, Germany was dedicating 40% of its total industry to aircraft production, yet delivered less than half the American output. An increasing reliance on coerced labor disastrously backfired. Sabotage was widespread. Output per worker actually fell in Germany after 1943, while American per capita productivity increased by 300%. The factories built for war would underpin American post-war affluence. Aluminum plants that once made bomber materials now supplied metal for new suburbs. Chemicals intended for aviation fuel became the source for consumer plastics. Machine tool factories that equipped aircraft plants were retooled for America's industrial leadership. Beyond sheer quantity, organizational mastery stood out. The War Production Board coordinated 184,000 companies with remarkable efficiency. IBM punchcard technology kept tabs on millions of components across thousands of suppliers. MIT's Radiation Laboratory, which employed 4,000 scientists, created all-weather navigation tools for American bombers. When the vulnerability of the B-17's nose to attack was discovered, Boeing equipped it with chin turrets in just 60 days. When missions in the Pacific needed longer-range planes, Consolidated modified B-24s without ceasing production. By contrast, German alterations took months, sometimes years. American enhancements in equipment came in a matter of weeks. This flexibility mattered as much as the vast scale of output. American aircraft were constantly upgraded based on feedback from worldwide combat. Reports from the Pacific reached manufacturing lines on the Atlantic within days. German aircraft, assembled in isolated subterranean factories by forced labor, remained essentially unchanged, while American planes improved week by week. The loop connecting combat feedback and production was unprecedentedly efficient. Pilots' suggestions rapidly reached engineers. Engineers' fixes were put into assembly lines in a matter of days. Production workers' ideas went straight to the designers. This bottom-up, democratic flow of information outperformed Germany's rigid chain of command. On October 15, 1946, mere hours before his planned execution, Göring composed his last letter. It was in this document that he fully acknowledged the decisive role of industrial might in the war's outcome. He wrote that America won because of its manufacturing strength, not military skill. It wasn't better soldiers that defeated them, but more effective factories. The country he had looked down upon as capable only of consumer goods had buried the Wehrmacht beneath mountains of aluminum and steel. In his final conversation with Gilbert, Göring was just as candid. "We took on an industrial giant we thought was asleep. We were doomed once it awoke. They did more than just outbuild us, they changed the very nature of production. Every part of their system was superior." That night Göring ended his own life, but his last words remain the definitive judgment on the production war. The Reichsmarshal who once sneered at American capability died knowing that a single U.S. factory had outbuilt his entire air force through the conflict. Most military historians now view America's manufacturing feat as the pivotal element in Allied success. Lacking this massive material advantage, D-Day likely could not have happened, the bombing offensive would have faltered, and victory in the Pacific would have been out of reach. According to Richard Overy, the foremost historian of the air campaign, final victory was a product of sheer material strength, not courage or tactical genius. In the end, the Allies triumphed because they drowned their opponents in manufactured goods. The data irrefutably confirms this. In 1944, the United States was turning out more military aircraft on its own than all other nations, both Axis and Allied, combined. This wasn't simply a marginal edge, it was dominance on an unprecedented scale. What Germany faced was total, not partial, defeat. Yet the implications of this achievement reached beyond just victory in battle. It was proof that democracy could surpass dictatorship, that freedom was more potent than oppression, that cooperation based on consent was stronger than coercion. The people who accomplished this transformation were not prisoners or forced conscripts, they were free citizens, unified by common purpose. Göring's underestimation of America's industrial power is now recognized as one of history's greatest errors. His disregard for the strength of democratic industry doomed Germany to defeat and cost millions of lives. That lack of recognition for American potential assured the Third Reich's destruction before a single Allied bomber flew over Germany. The leap from 3,000 to 100,000 aircraft a year showed the world that free societies in crisis could achieve miracles. American laborers not only soared past Roosevelt's ambitious target, they doubled it. The U.S. didn't just equal German output, it surpassed it 5 times over, all while simultaneously combating Japan in the Pacific. Today's leaders should heed Göring's blunder. To presume democratic states weak due to their peaceful nature, or to underestimate the productive prowess of free peoples who prefer affluence to aggression, risks catastrophic error. In 1940, America seemed wholly unready for conflict. Just 4 years later, it emerged as an unmatched industrial powerhouse. The arsenal of democracy proved that the factory floor could be as decisive as the battlefield, that the contributions of assemblers were as essential as those of soldiers, and that industrial mobilization could secure victory as much as military planning. Göring only fully realized this truth when it was too late, and the price was his nation's ruin. His trajectory from mocking Franklin Roosevelt's proclamation in May 1940 to his execution after Nuremberg in October 1946 mirrored Nazi Germany's annihilation. His disdain for American industry became the epitaph of the Third Reich, a state that overvalued ideology and undervalued real capacity, that confused totalitarianism for strength, and that thought racial dogma might triumph over industrial arithmetic. Hitler's Reichsmarshal, who had once minimized the U.S. aircraft industry, died aware that in 1944 alone, the U.S. built more warplanes than Germany managed over the entire conflict. Göring's ridicule of democratic manufacturing serves as the costliest jest in history, settled with the coin of utter defeat. America constructed 295,959 military planes, Germany 94,677. Yet genuine victory was found in process rather than mere output. It proved that free people could surpass slaves in productivity, that democratic teamwork could excel above dictatorial direction, that a nation of immigrants, encompassing diverse backgrounds, could collectively reach seemingly impossible heights. Every B-24 that emerged from Willow Run's lines every 63 minutes symbolized democracy's defiance of despotism. Each rivet was fastened by a woman recently at home. Each engine was assembled by a youth who had left high school for the factory. Each wing was put together by people who had escaped poverty or prejudice. Together, they established that unified free societies could bury tyranny with overwhelming production. Göring had scoffed at the notion of the U.S. building 50,000 planes in a year. America responded by constructing twice that amount and in so doing, altered world history. His laughter endures as the echo of disastrous misjudgment, the critical underestimation of democracy's production might by a man ignorant of both democracy and industry. In the end, those 300,000 planes would bury not only Göring, but the entire Nazi edifice, with a scale and finality that made his contempt the most comprehensive defeat in history.